So it's been a busy weekend here for games with Gray Zone Warfare having a playable build in invite-only sessions, which we'll have a review on here soon. Meant to do that yesterday, but timing got away from me. But on the other side of the coin, there was a limited playtest for XDefiant, the first time that we've seen the game playable since September of last year. And if you missed the last PTS like I did, since June, if I'm not mistaken. So almost a whole year, and we had a total of 48 hours plus an additional 6 extending it to right around shortly before this video goes live. So in nearly a year since my last play session, was it any good? Today I want to run down my review of the game here with you, some good, some bad, and frankly some expectation management. As we go along, drop your thoughts, drop a like if you enjoy, and subscribe for more XDefiant and other FPS coverage. I'd love to have you in the community, but for now, let's jump into it. So let's start out with the good. Firstly, number one, it was great to play the game again. After so long here, honestly, one of the things that I've said the last couple of months now at this point, talking about getting ready for any sort of potential launch here of XDefiant, whenever it may be, the biggest thing that I hated is that I was just reusing gameplays from June. Like we did, I don't know, like 30 or 40 videos or something in that span. So to have the same gameplay just recycled on a different loop or a different way that we presented it, I was a little bit frustrated that I just didn't have any more to offer you guys. So it's nice now to be able to play it again, get more footage and everything like that. But I really appreciate some of the quality of life adjustments we also saw in the game. Our last video broke those down more, but a quick rundown, some of my favorites. I like the new in-game medal pop-ups we have. I like those new icons showing the number of teammates on a flag capture. That's something that's really beneficial in just giving information to the player. The new kill streak counter in the upper right of the HUD. I love that as a content creator. Obviously, that helps me identify pieces of the matches that I want to showcase. Daily, base, and major challenges are definitely something it's nice to see that expanded upon. Changes to the menu to make it better looking in presentation. Enjoy that as well. But anyways, yeah, just a lot of smaller stuff here that we mentioned. I appreciate that. I'm glad that we see some adjustments here. And it's not exactly one-to-one, even though it's kind of close, one-to-one what we played back in September, back in June. Obviously, no skill-based matchmaking, playing matches where I got slapped and then matches where I did the slapping. I personally think that's how it should be. Varying skill levels each game, not necessarily manipulating or artificially inflating any of your matches just because an algorithm says so. And obviously the game has a fun arcade feel. I don't know if this next part's gonna make any sense, but I'm gonna try and articulate it the best that I can. One of the things that I really like about this that's tough to do with existing brands is not having a preconceived notion of what you're supposed to feel, if that makes sense. Like Fortnite, you know it's gonna be zany and out there. COD has kind of gone that way this year with Modern Warfare 3, starting at a sort of like season 7 almost, where you don't lose any camos, you pick right up with all kinds of crazy cosmetics, and you don't reset like we normally see with a realistic setting perhaps like that, which is for some people, not for others. Battlefield has that same feeling again, where you're kind of knowing what to expect going into it, but XDefiant is fresh. It's a new slate, and as such, I kind of feel like I was able to not take it as seriously again, if that makes sense. I don't know if that's the best way to put it. Like, I'm not too focused on being immersed in any world because it's a blend of many worlds at that from different Ubisoft IPs. I'm just focused on trying to do my best and having some fun with it, which certainly feels nice as an FPS creator. COD has felt like a job for a while now. Enjoyable at times, sure, but because it's so ingrained in the channel identity, it's not like one of those things where I personally feel like I can just switch off and just enjoy it. So I don't know if any of this makes sense, but again, it was just nice to be able to enjoy some classic arcade shooter style gameplay. But anyways, obviously that's kind of the stuff that is the basics here. A lot of the game is what we saw in the last playtest. Weapons, create a class, maps, modes, that kind of stuff. So it's not really like we're expanding too much on it where I'm like, this has changed so much since my last review of XDefiant and our last play session that I was able to take part in. So for the most part, I mean, it's kind of just some of the same stuff, but let's talk about some of the bad stuff here that I hope gets worked on and we hopefully see some adjustments for. Firstly, I feel like some of the motion and the feeling of the controls have been off. This honestly, again, comes down to one of those same things that I've been saying since day one of playing, really, that I don't know if it'll ever get corrected or not, but it's something that I can get used to. It's just, it feels off. I'd say when I think about it most, I feel like the left thumbstick has more gravity or weight than other shooters for movement and everything like that, which makes it an odd feeling, like kind of a bit clunky in that aspect. And again, I don't know if this is just me trying to figure out a solution as to why I'm feeling like this is just a little off, but it's been there since day one. It is something that, again, is possible to get used to after a couple of hours of playing. It was a non-issue, but it's one of those things that it's kind of jarring jumping over initially. The S curves and the rest of the the aim settings kind of feel hit or miss. I truly cannot pinpoint what's wrong with those or like what feels off. In terms of aiming, Exclusive Ace actually broke down a nice demonstration of what I've been feeling with firing weapons since day one that I could never put my finger on. But visually, it looks like your shots are off center, and so that might throw off your aim a bit. But it's weird because the shot is placed where your reticle is, but the next frame is when the tracer of that round actually showcases. So it looks like in real time, like your shots are off, but it's actually registering before that visual is popping up on screen for the player to demonstrate where that's going. So where that inconsistency applies, it kind of boils down to that. So I'm hoping that can be adjusted in the future. Netcode obviously is still something that is going to be a big topic of discussion here with this weekend. I'm still dying around a lot of corners, a lot of walls this entire weekend. It was almost like we were kind of back to step one, but this whole past year was rebuilding that to get back to step one. So fingers crossed we can get this adjusted. But I mean, if they're looking to launch the game in the next 2 months or so, I don't really know how much is going to be differentiated from now until then. That seems like still a big improvement that would need to be had, but with not a whole ton of time. I also felt like there were major inconsistencies in shots and damage output. Again, that could be something that comes back to visually how those shots are dispersed, or it could be a netcode thing where maybe I am dying pretty quickly by comparison, or my shots just aren't registering as they're intended to. But those, I think, are still my two biggest issues with XDefiant here out of this most recent playtest. And there's a lot of other smaller things you could probably say as well, but those are the big critical ones of what I think if there's going to be something that hinders the gameplay experience, it's going to be of those categories. But overall, here's my thoughts on the game. The game in itself is fine. It's a free-to-play shooter that will find its audience eventually. Will it include you or I or other COD grinders that have been playing the franchise for years on end? Who knows? If not, that's totally fine. Personally, I'll be playing it because I did enjoy a lot of XDefiant. I enjoyed the straight-up arcade style of gameplay. Obviously, you get cheap points for no skill-based matchmaking nowadays, which is fine. But anyways, it's something new to play and break up that offering in the FPS space right now. If you're wanting faster-paced action, there's not a whole ton of that right now. You've got Modern Warfare 3 and COD as you do every year. You got a bit of Battlefield stuff, sure, but beyond that, not many major contenders in the FPS offering right now. Gray Zone, as we mentioned earlier, wasn't a playable build this week and still is for invite only, but that couldn't be further from an entirely different game. A tactical, realistic milsim extraction shooter versus a hero arcade shooter. Not going to attract the same audiences, or rather not going to really be competing for or taking the other's player base. So end of the day, XDefiant was and still is a perfectly passable arcade shooter. But while this is sure a +1 in the pro column, why could it also be a +1 in the con column? Well, to me, the big thing is that everyone branded this as the COD killer. Anyone who's real with themselves will realize that is never going to happen. Never was. Even if it was a perfect game, checked all the boxes, a brand new IP would never dethrone, especially initially, one of the largest gaming franchises of all time with annually 9 figures of a marketing budget. It just wouldn't happen. The things that appealed initially, at least to our audiences, perhaps with the crossover to Call of Duty, was born out of the absolute disaster mechanically of Modern Warfare 2's year support. I say this genuinely, if you guys enjoyed that game, Modern Warfare 2, that's great, love that for you, but it objectively changed so much about the wheel that was not necessary. And if you look at the overall trends in the Call of Duty brand, the Warzone interest over time, it did a ton of damage that we're still trying to see recover from. Where, listen, again, Modern Warfare 3, I like what we have here at this and what we're doing and how Warzone has gone and changed now, adding things and adjusting things back to where they were. But let's be honest here, the last year and a half, maybe a little more, has essentially just been content reverts, changing mechanics, bringing back maps that were removed, and so on and so forth. That data's gotta be there for them to do that. A billion-dollar company who decides every single move that they do based on market value doesn't care at all what a few hundred or a few thousand streamers or content creators think of their game. I know people tend to think, oh, content creators and streamers just dictate everything. They have so much power. Brother, I'm here to tell you, having done this now for 10 plus years, being a part of groups of like content capture sessions or streaming events and stuff, we're just marketing tools, man. We don't have any sort of say or direct line to the executives here making these decisions, the leadership teams for COD. None of that happens. This franchise was thriving before the rise of gaming content, and if all of us creators just disappeared, maybe they'd see some hit, but it would not derail the franchise at all. They'd be just fine after us because we're the vocal minority. But anyways, tangent aside, XDefiant appealed initially because of a scenario of this is what we should have had in a year where there was so much stubbornness in the dev team, so much lack of attention or care for the player feedback and minimal content that everybody just wanted something else, something that felt like a classic Call of Duty game. So when a game comes around that's looking to replicate that classic COD feeling, you bet people are going to be amped for that. They're going to be really hyped and see those levels just skyrocket for excitement. But with Modern Warfare 3 relatively correcting most of these mechanics that we saw in fundamentals, you have a ton of what we asked for when XDefiant was first in that buzz phase and what it looked to offer that would differentiate itself from COD to XDefiant. But with similar movement mechanics and other fundamentals, you have a similar product, but COD has that polish and that COD feel that no other FPS game out there can really match, which isn't a bad thing per se, it's just the nature of the beast. The air quote COD standard is the COD standard for a reason. So personally, while I still think that work needs to be done on this game, I think the netcode needs work, and I'm a little curious what that means for the future if an entire year was spent rebuilding a networking system and netcode system that if we're just getting back to square one after all that time, well, how long is any improvements going to take at that point? But while I still think that work needs to be done on this game, I think that it's still a very acceptable game, one that I did have fun on. It just might not be what everyone hoped it to be because end of the day, the way I see it, foundational rebuilds keeping the game's offering relatively the same. Again, what we got back in the beta in June and the PTS back in September, there's not really a whole ton that changed in that game offering that would be different to bring players back as like, hey, we added so much more stuff. So when foundational rebuilds keep that offering relatively the same level and then your weaker product is elevated by correcting its air quote mistakes, well, you see where that imbalance or perhaps lack of interest or dying hype comes from. For me, I'll still be playing with the game as it launches. I enjoyed my time and I'm really looking forward to the launch, but entirely understand if that's not for you anymore. It's okay to recognize that not everything has to be a dead game or whatever meme in the chat it is because you're not excited for it anymore. Gaming's meant to be enjoyable, so if it's not for you, that's perfectly fine to move on to something that is enjoyable. Anyways, that's where I'm at. Enjoyed my few hours of playtime here I got amidst a very busy weekend, but also looking forward to the future and what we can see going forward with XDefiant. I'll still probably be making content on it because I did enjoy it, but again, if it's not for you, totally fine if you don't want to watch going forward. But anyways, that's where we're at. That's my take here on the PTS and the 48 or I guess 54-hour play session we had. But let me know your thoughts down below. What do you guys think of this here? Like it, dislike it, had a good time, whatever the case, drop your thoughts. But if you enjoyed the video, do me a favor and drop a like on it. And if you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss a single thing regarding XDefiant and other FPS coverage. I'd love to have you in the community. But for now, thanks so much for watching. Mine has been Espresso. I'll see you later. Take care and peace.